Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Anda sedang menonton Agenda Awani dan dalam episod ini saya begitu gembira kerana biasanya perbincangan tentang teknologi tinggi, inovasi dan sebagainya hanya berkisar dalam pertemuan-pertemuan bertaraf tinggi, bertahap tinggi dengan pemimpin tertinggi. Tetapi saya berpeluang hadir sempena kunjungan Perdana Menteri Britain David Cameron ke Kuala Lumpur. Ada pertemuan-pertemuan di antara pemimpin industri, akademia, dalam meja bulat di antara wakil UK dan Malaysia, dan saya ingin membawa keluar satu aspek itu. Saya ada tetamu khas untuk perkara itu. Oleh itu saya ingin meminta izin berbicara dalam bahasa Inggeris. I was just explaining to my audience that tonight we're going to speak about things that usually talk about at a very high level, elite kind of top representative. But I'll try having you to represent that group here today. This is Professor Christina Eniu, the Provost and CEO of University of Nottingham, Malaysia. Jalan Broga to semuanya. But sometimes there's a bit of hesitancy and fear to talk about stuff like innovation, high technology, R&D. But I promise my audience that in this session today, I'm going to make even the average layman understand. And I think you can help me with that, because as I was sitting there quietly, feeling so small in a very high-powered round table in between UK and Malaysia, where you were at in the middle, if I can take out one aspect, I would take out the aspect of education, especially from two levels. One is the R&D for innovation to happen, to be prototyped, and then to be given to the industrialists maybe to further develop, market and commercialize. That's one. But the other one, who's going to do all this? Is suddenly we're going to change from a bagless vacuum cleaner to a robotic one. So what kind of students or graduates will be coming in and doing all that, so upskilling and all that. So that's the first two. If we have time, we're going to do more. But please, Professor, if you can share your views on that, because I like the word hybrid that you use. You're neither UK or Malaysia, because the institution that you are in have to be both.
Yeah, and we are both, and we're very proud to be both. But the two things that you've highlighted there, both the kind of the start of the innovation process and then the way in which new ideas actually get to market and start to make a difference in terms of economic growth and development, I think are two very important processes. If you think about the ideas side first, what we need is we need creative thinkers. We need people with a high level of skill and knowledge, but they also need to be able to think differently. They need to be able to see problems from different angles. They need to be able to see opportunities in terms of the technologies that they're working with. And somebody yesterday mentioned the importance of freedom of expression in science and engineering. That's what I mean, is you want somebody who will just come and look completely differently. And will take an idea and stick with it. And I often quote an example to my students about a colleague of mine at Nottingham many years ago who was a physicist, is a physicist in fact, and spent a lot of time playing around with magnets and how you could use magnets against the human body and get pictures. Most people thought he was a little bit mad, but they left him alone to get on with it, and he got an idea, he was committed to it. He was one of the people who invented MRI.
Cool.
You know, so there's something.
Imaging,
So there's something about having that different way of thinking, and that's an area where I think universities have a huge role to play, is to encourage that creative thinking.
Professor, I'm so sorry to do this to you, but I'm going to Malaysianize a bit the way the next point that I'm going to make. I'm sure you're also aware of it now, that the debate about education in this country, if I go to the university academic staff and they will say, what do you expect us to do? They come to us after 11 years in the school system. But then when I go down to school, by the time they left us, they were very, very good. But the moment they went into university, so I'm going to ask you to be a neutral party here, even though you have to represent higher education. But looking at it from a practical application, in school, because of our way also, just look at the uniforms that our school kids have to wear compared to in UK, for example. But that's just not it. A more holistic way would be, more often than not, in a class, because we have sometimes 40 to 50 in public school classes, please keep quiet, don't move around, or don't do that. So this don't word keep on going. But like what you have illustrated just now, maybe it's time for a shift to do that. Why don't you try that? What do you think? Can we really see it that way? Or is that too much to hope from a system that has to cater for so large a group of people?
So I think it's very easy for us all to shift the problem to somebody else. Oh, it's not my fault at university because that's what the kids were like, and the schools, no, the kids were great, but look what the university's done to them. And you know, I think we need to stop saying it's somebody else's fault, and I think we need to think about how we do things differently. And again, I have a very good colleague in our business school in the UK, and he's been very interested in creativity education, how you can encourage people to learn the sort of skills that go with being creative and innovative and entrepreneurial. And people said to him, yeah, but you can only teach that in small groups. You can only teach to groups of 15. He did it for a class of 800.
Okay, cool.
So it can be done, but it requires us in education to think a little bit differently as well. It won't work for every student, but at least we give the opportunity to those who can take advantage of it. Not everyone will be creative, not everyone will innovate, but some of them will.
Okay, I have to go for the first break, but once we are back, I want to lay a bit of pre-discussion before the break. If I look at the areas where Nottingham University's strategic research are looking at, you know, you have aerospace, autism, business innovation, productivity, but you also have maybe cross-cultural communication in that sense. So there's also another debate in this country among the scientists, which is on the left side, maybe there's the social scientists and humanities scientists. On the other side, there's the pure science and the STEM side and whatever. But because you're a hybrid institution, so I want to get your views on that. Maybe you have come across that practically yourself, but what's the way to go? Because we have always been having close ties with the UK, but this time around, we just want to move it to another higher level altogether. Together we create wealth through innovation. Let's discuss that after this short break. Hello, thank you for still tuning in to this discussion about UK and Malaysia going to the next level. Of course, we have had long relationship with the UK, but this time around, if we focus it down to wealth creation and going there through the business of innovation, that's what we're looking at. And I'm very glad that I was there at the round table, because I hear the Minister, Javid, saying that there's no limit to the amount of foreign students that want to study in the UK. And then if they want to stay and work, get the experience, network, all the better. Because sometimes we keep getting different signals and perception. But that's out of the way, and we know that was said here. But the debate about do we straight away inculcate multidisciplinary approach in the student, beginning even from the first semester of the first year, because sometimes there's too much for a person to decipher. So, and then you've got to manage whether they can pursue and have the freedom to pursue their interests, because that's the point about innovation, the ability to ask the question and keep on asking it. How do you do it for Nottingham University, and how do you maximize the potential from both sides using this yardstick to measure?
So I think it is difficult, because a student comes to university to do, let us say, chemical engineering, and there is a lot of content, there's a lot of material they've got to learn. Equally, if they come to do a course in politics and international relations. So there are tensions between getting the discipline-specific knowledge and getting the breadth. One of the things we try and do a lot is we build into individual subjects opportunities to acquire skills around teamwork, around problem solving, around communications and presentations. Later on in a student's course, and this tends to work much better at master's and PhD level, is to start thinking about much more cross-disciplinary working. And so you can take something like food security. Now, it's partly about the crops, it's about the nutrients in the soil, about the pesticides, insecticides, the productivity and so on. But it's also about how crops get used, about take-up, about what you can cook with them, about people's attitudes. And by bringing students together from the social sciences at one end, right down to molecular biologists at another, and putting them together, they get a real breadth of understanding of the issues that are associated with the area that they work in. And you can say the same for green technologies. You know, you can say the same for energy consumption. There's a whole series of areas where this cross-disciplinary process really does bring people together in a very effective way.
The reason I ask that also because I've been honored to, because I stay close to the scientists in this country, so when they go to the Nobel ceremony, sometimes they bring me, if they have the time. And I was in Karolinska Institute in Sweden once, and they look over the Physiology and Medicine Awards. And it's a whole approach of life sciences, plus a study that spent 50 to 100 years on gerontology and also cultural and also a family spectrum kind of look. So, and now they're looking at putting in staff who come from all over the world, because if you're studying just one particular area of the world, then it might not be relevant. So as the trend goes that way, and I don't think there's ever been, over the last 10 years or more, one winner for a Nobel Prize. There's always been a group of scientists, because for that particular gene splicing technology, I need the marker from these other scientists who's doing it. But how do you put it and scope it down to one university and one campus to have this particular insight? Because sometimes it's so easy for us to lose sight of the world when we're so focused on what we're going to do. Can you share us the best practices from Broga?
Well, so I think the simple answer is these days you can't just do it through one university. It's kerjasama, it's collaboration, togetherness, because that's what brings together. It brings the best talent, it brings the best experience, it brings equipment, it brings knowledge, funding. Just take work between the UK and Malaysia. And if you want to work on tropical crops, then you don't want to work on those in the UK. You want to work on them here. So you have an obvious opportunity for collaboration. There are a whole series of aspects of public health where there are real benefits from being able to work together because you're in different locations. And so I think the idea that individual universities can solve some of the big challenges we face is mostly a bit out of date. It is about finding the best and bringing them together and getting them to collaborate.
Can you share with us one area? I heard palm oil waste, for example, millions of tons, like Minister Ma was making the point. Is that one area that your university is really looking at, and that particular collaboration have multiple stakeholders from both sides of the world?
So we've been doing some work around palm oil mill effluent, and it's fairly unpleasant stuff. And we've, in this case, actually working with business rather than with other universities. But working jointly with business to develop a bioreactor that will use effectively a green technology to clean up the effluent, to get rid of the nasty bits. You can tell
and
I'm
make
not
something useful then.
And get clean water out at the end of it. But there is it's an example of wanting to work with business, because you actually want a technology that will work at a commercial scale, not just in a lab.
Sometimes on paper it looks good. Take the top brains from the UK, put them together with top brains from Malaysia, and voila, things happen. But it's not that easy. There's cultural stuff to look at, and then there's a story about how trust and credibility also. So how do you pave the way for real interaction to happen?
So I think you're exactly right. It's really easy to assume that we can just pop good brains in there, mix them up, and out will come fantastic solutions. But we're all human as well. And so we have our interests, we have our anxieties, we have our worries. And quite simply, some people will just not work well together. And so often I think with collaborations, it makes good sense to try and build from the bottom up.
Okay.
So you find where people are working together,
Yes.
you find where there are good links, and you start connecting and supporting and encouraging and building on, if you like, the things that are there and are working, rather than trying to, you know, it's a bit like trying to force a marriage.
Yes. Okay. We understand that well in this country. We go for the last break, and both myself and Professor, we are not pure scientists in that way, but we do want to talk about high technology, and I want to ask Professor after this to really maybe give us some hope for the future, for us to be excited about. What are a few specific areas that you think will really be game changers for both Malaysia and UK? It was mentioned about composite technology, for example, but there were others. And maybe from your own point of view, because you have the purview of, you know, looking at it holistically. And also, I want to tie that up to what one of the panel speakers was saying, like, let's find real workers out there, you know, stop just producing lawyers and accountants and have more engineers. No pun intended, no malice to the lawyers and accountants out there, but this was what was discussed, and I want to bring that up with Professor right after this break. I'm having a very good time, you know. I've always regretted the fact that I'm too old to do a postgraduate study, but
You're never too old.
I can have professors around, so I can feel like I have the environment of intellectual discourse. And so the point that I was alluding to earlier, please give us green shoots where you think Malaysia and UK working together can really transform things, not just for both countries, but for the world. You know, if we solve things down, finding the cure for cancer, we solve things for humanity. So does climate change and other stuff. So maybe one or two that you think, from your point of view, is the thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's some really great work going on in collaboration across the UK and Malaysia. And there's some fantastic research that's going on here in Malaysia. And it's very much for me about exploiting some of the unique resources that Malaysia has as a country. So, for example, incredible biodiversity. Now, that biodiversity presents huge opportunities in terms of new food crops, but also in terms of new medicines. Because, of course, there's a tremendously good capacity in terms of identifying rainforest plants that have medicinal properties, taking them through screening processes and on into drug delivery. I think green technologies, again, there's some fantastic work going on here. Some really interesting opportunities, because the challenge in Malaysia is about keeping things cool. The challenge in the UK is about getting things warm. You know, if you can find a technology that does both of those things, you know, that's a tremendous opportunity. So, you know, so I think there's a tremendous amount of potential and some really exciting research that's going on.
I know you always say that you are in the middle, but I'm going to force you to put on the thinking cap of just from the UK perspective, because I'm trying to have an empathy here. If I'm a scientist and researcher in the UK, what possible new breath of life would looking towards Malaysia give me from that perspective? Because sometimes being there in Nottingham or Manchester or Oxford or somewhere, you know, it's that personal experience that I don't have that colors my judgment of what I decide. So, but now with this sort of highway open, then it could bring in these elements that I've not known before.
So I think, I mean, for researchers, any researcher anywhere is always looking to work with the best. So they'll look and say, you know, who do I need to work with? Where's the really interesting stuff happening? And I think if you're sat in the UK, and certainly looking at the experience of my UK colleagues and what brings them to Malaysia, a lot come around health-related research, because it's a different set of medical conditions, and it's a different setting with different diets that impact upon health. So I think the medicine area is one that's very interesting, but I think it comes back, the biodiversity is massive. Yep. That is massive. And as I say, it's not just about conserving elephants or orangutans. Yes. It's so much more than that, and it's about what that biodiversity can do for us in terms of a whole range of technologies. And I think that's what for me will pull a lot of people in.
I'm actually a cheapskate. I would just be happy if the relationship look at it scientifically, apply biomechanics to football in Malaysia, for example, because I'm a Liverpool fan. But before we end, there's this eternal thing that I feel, it feels eternal, because since I can remember being a journalist, there's always this debate about what should you take once you leave school and go into higher education. And mostly, from when I was small until now, the typical things that the parents would say would be, I want you to either choose to be an accountant, lawyer, or then the rest will come. Because it's about getting good jobs, solid income. But what our friend from BAE said at the round table really, I know I've heard that before, but for him to phrase it like that, what do you think? You know, engineers, for example, are we really short of engineers, and the interest in engineering have gone down because we need real people to come up with real products and machine it and put it out there?
So, I mean, when you look at the figures for Malaysia, I think there are lots of kids who are coming through school and they're going into science and engineering. I think part of the issue is that they don't stay there. So that when they graduate, instead of becoming a professional practicing engineer, instead of going into science work, actually what they decide to do is that they will go into management and maybe they will do accounting training. So I think there's something about trying to keep students in the area that they choose, but also about encouraging more and encouraging the brightest. And it seems to me that yes, there are good careers in law and accounting, but if you want to really make a difference, if you want to have an impact and change the world for the best, your best chance of doing that is going to be through science or engineering.
And there are areas where nobody has gone yet, and you could fill it in. Don't worry about getting something to do, because there will be something to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Prof, you have to come back. That's all the time. They have not managed to innovate more time for me. Thank you so much. I think I'll pay you a visit in Jalan Broga Semenyih to find out more. You can also send in your own views, hantarkan pandangan anda sendiri kepada pelbagai platform yang Astro Awani ada, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter dan sebagainya, ataupun terus muat turun aplikasi Mudah Alih iOS dan Android untuk anda boleh menonton dan memberi pandangan secara langsung di gadget Mudah Alih kegemaran anda. Sekian, selamat malam. Terima kasih. InsyaAllah kita jumpa lagi.